far. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining. Welcome to our panel. So the structure of the panel will be as follows. First, I introduce Astra Global a little bit. Then panelists will introduce themselves. We have about 15 minutes to an hour for the panel discussion on the current trends in the digital health and biotech. And then we will have a pitching session. All of you guys received score sheets with companies that will be pitching. We would be very grateful if you could fill in the score sheets. So first, let me share this. So first I want to use Astra Global is a global company matching investors and high potential startups. We operate both in Europe and in the USA. So our services include warm introductions to investors, high net worth individuals and corporate companies through our network, which we have throughout our activities such as events and also through our partners and background. We can also do deal structuring advice. I personally was involved in private equity as an M&A lawyer for about 10 years. So we can review your term sheets. It's mainly for startups and help you with negotiations with investors. Do this event also with the partnership with Gold Ventures Investment. The company helping us with valuation of startups and also with actually getting grants, public grants from European Union for startups, which can be matched with the venture capital and thus reducing the risk for venture capitalists. So if you are interested in such grants, please let us know. So I would like to introduce our panel and I will let them introduce themselves. You have maybe 1 minute of introducing your fund and who you are. Let's start with Yervand.
Yeah, thank you, Elena. Thank you for the invitation. Yeah, my name is Yervand Sarkisyan. I'm originally from Armenia. I lived in US for some time, then in Germany, and for the last 15 years, I've lived in London, initially in Cambridge and then London. I'm a founding partner in early stage tech focused fund. We invest primarily in machine learning and AI and deep tech companies with connection to Armenia. So some of our investments are in UK, some in US, and some in Armenia. So there's 3 regions. And currently, health tech and food tech, those areas are very exciting. So I'm looking at those more actively. Thank you.
Konstantinos?
Yes, hello, my name is Konstantinos Maramenos. I'm the origination manager of Brookstreet Equity Partners. We are a UK-based FCA-regulated private equity house. I would say we would position ourselves as a growth cap investor, meaning we focus on scale-up businesses, not startups, but companies that have overcome the so-called valley of death and are ready for the next step. You can call it a Series C or Series D investor. We operate a proper GPLP structure, managing international private money, and our geographical focus is pan-European with a special emphasis in Greece, because of the strong network we have there. Myself, I'm here as well. And we are sector agnostic, but we want to search for innovation, exports orientation, intellectual property, and good management.
Thank you. Richard? Did I see him? Maybe he's not here. Okay, Adam?
Hi, Elena. Thanks for the invitation. Delighted to be here. I'm Adam Dakin. I'm Manager and Director for the Health Tech vertical at Dreamit Ventures. We're a sleeves up venture fund. We're in Philadelphia. We focus on 3 verticals: health tech, urban tech, and secure tech. My team is the health tech team. We're a little bit unique in that we run what you might call a late stage accelerator. We prefer to call it a growth platform alongside of the fund. We only invest in companies that go through that platform. It gives us, we pride ourselves on adding a lot of value to these companies. We get them access to a network of nearly 70 enterprise healthcare systems, payers, large multinationals, big pharma partners, which really slices a lot of the time off the front end of that sales cycle. And then we do the same thing on the back end with a network of nearly 1,000 venture investors that we can introduce them to. We're pretty good at it. Over half of our companies will go on to close a slate seed or Series A round after completing the Dreamit program, and that really is our strike zone. And much like Richard mentioned, we're looking for companies that are already in market, they already have customers, and it's all about scaling the business and raising capital to support that commercialization effort.
Great, thank you, Adam. Sean?
Yeah, so I'm managing director of SOSV, and SOSV runs the accelerators IndieBio and Hacks, and China Accelerator, Mox, FoodX, and one or two others. We're the most active investor in life sciences and in hardware in the world, and we invest generally in 150 new startups every year out of the 8,000 or so that apply in those areas. We have, in life sciences, our offices are in San Francisco and New York now, and in hardware, it's San Francisco, Shenzhen, Tokyo, Xi'an, and in China Accelerator, it's in mainland China, Taiwan, and now investing a lot in India as well.
Thank you so much, Sean. Sergey.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sergey Kovalenko. I'm co-founder of Bravo Capital, and Bravo is a funding platform mostly for mobile businesses. So like all our companies, they're mobile first, and this is like a unique funding model. So we're providing non-dilutive capital for all our companies. Right now, we have close to 150 companies in our portfolio. Mostly it's a health, fitness, nutrition companies, and we work with companies from 27 countries right now, and majority of all our companies that we working with, this is a very fast growing company. So like we helping them with user acquisition, and we help them to continue growing their business and just be successful.
Okay,
thank you.
Great. Ingrid. Ingrid, are you here?
Yes, you can hear me now. Thank you, everybody, for allowing me to participate today in my role as a senator of the WBAF Angel Investment Fund. What I usually do is I work with startups for our global startup competition, which happens once a year. We cover about 85 to 100 countries, depending how you count. And we have a broad investment portfolio across all industries. Of course, digital health, biotech, and pharma are always in everybody's portfolio that has such a broad global coverage. And it is my pleasure today to participate. I also teach in the World Business School that is affiliated with the WBAF fund, and that's another opportunity where I work not only with startup entrepreneurs, but also with investors alike. Thank you.
Thank you. Julio, I didn't call you, I guess.
It's totally fine.
Sorry.
So I'm Julio Marquez. I with New York Bay Capital. We are a combination of investment bank, more like an advisory firm, and also an investor, because we have a sister fund called New York Bay Blue, which makes investments. So, well, we typically, our model is that we have clients and we make sure that those clients fit various profiles, and then we go out and raise capital for the clients. We always offer investing alongside our capital sources in our clients, so that people know that we put our money where our mouth is. So some people believe that that's like a merchant banking strategy. But we're active in the biotech sector. Recently, we've worked and raised capital and invested in invested in companies like Epibone, which is in bone regeneration, Oi Health, which is in telemedicine, and Sorrento Therapeutics, which is a it's publicly traded company in various things, including non-opioid pain management. Although they're now recently have been making headlines because of their COVID. So we're open to more clients and investments. Personally, I'm a member of the Harvard Business School Angels of New York, as well as the MIT Angels of New York. And so we certainly, you know, I look at everything from a very early startup phase to, of course, develop companies like the ones I mentioned. You know, one of them is already in the, it's already trades publicly. So thanks for the invitation. Look forward to the discussion.
Thank you. Amy.
Sure, I'm Amy Salzhauer. I'm sitting here today in Charleston, South Carolina. I'm one of the managing partners of Good Growth Capital. We are world-leading experts in technology commercialization, so we invest very, very early. We have two families of funds, a seed and Series A fund, and then which we just call our general funds, and then the Infinite Carter Fund, which focuses on pre-seed and seed investments primarily out of MIT and then in transformative science. We do take some investments that aren't MIT affiliated if they really fit that bucket of transformative science. We do a huge amount of work with our entrepreneurs. We usually have worked for about a year or more with most of our entrepreneurs before we invest in them. We also are a majority women-owned fund, and we invest an impact portfolio, even though we invest for the highest possible return. So we invest in health tech and bio if there's exits within 4 to 7 years, in green tech, mostly advanced materials, and then in data science and physics and chemistry focused companies. And our health tech portfolio has about 1,000x return. So we're pretty strong in our health tech.
Great. Thank you, Amy. Varvara.
Hi, my name is Varvara. I'm representing the Arici family office. Previously was a medical device founder and then VC in San Francisco. But the family office is of the founder who is literally located throughout the globe, primarily in Singapore and Switzerland. I personally share those two locations in addition to San Francisco. We focus on health tech, sport tech. Because it's a family office, there is no such drive of allocation particular budget, but there is a drive to invest wholly in our portfolio companies. So sometimes we do get involved in active support and business development or any connection wise. The founder is himself a very successful serial entrepreneur who has built more than 20 companies, primarily in IT. His main company right now is Granatus at cyber protection. And with that, I'm also driving support of life science effort throughout startups. We've actually did a partnership offer to SOSV recently companies, just because I had my personal investment in one of SOSV companies in life science. So we're hands-on and one of our favorite fields, aside from our own fund, there are 2 or actually 3 venture funds that the founders started, and there we invest in IT and deep tech. So my personal focus is in health tech, diagnostic, sport tech, and very big fan of preventive and predictive, and especially excited at what the world will show us in healthcare of the future due to the current situation and extraordinary innovations coming because of that.
Okay, thank you so much. So let's start the discussion. Actually, we have a list of questions that we were supposed to discuss, kind of, but I want to change it actually. Can you share your worst case and your best case COVID adaptation scenario which you experienced through those months? Who wants to start? Sean?
Sure, I'm happy to if nobody else will. So our best case COVID company is a company called Illuna. Illuna has a machine learning focused spirometer that can predict an asthma attack. So their first customers are children with asthma and children with cystic fibrosis, and then they'll move into COPD. They were in pilots with 2 different hospitals in California. And what happened when COVID hit is that the doctors involved with those pilots got compassionate use clearance for Illuna's product. She shipped all of her inventory to those hospitals. And then when we reached out to say, how can we help you in this particular market, she said, I shipped all my inventory. I guess, could you fund me rapidly so I can make some more? So we wrote her a check, and 5 hours later, she had FDA clearance, full FDA clearance, which was really not expected for another 12 months. So COVID really just, catapulted her forward.
I guess because we had a best case, I'll give a worst case. we had a company in Brooklyn which is doing very great company, great growth, 8 million in revenue, 40 people manufacturing their products, huge, very, very positive growth track. And they had to, furlough all their workers in order to survive over the last 3 months, just because if you can't manufacture the product, if your people aren't allowed to go into the factory and make the product, there's very little you can do. So in order to survive, they laid off all the workers. They are starting to, we actually haven't, I'm not aware of a company that we've completely lost, but they will be fine in the end because they had a great business before, and they're restarting production now. So hopefully that'll be a better outcome in the end. On the best case side, we also had another company in Brooklyn that makes called Opentrons, that makes lab automation equipment, and they went from say 10 million or so in revenue to over 30 million in revenue during this period, and opened up. They hadn't been in the diagnostic market before. They were in other sort of liquid handling robot applications before, and that's just opened up a whole new market for them, a long-term market potential. So that's not a bad one. And we have about 30 companies that pivoted to support COVID, including some antiviral therapeutics, some antibody therapeutics, diagnostic tests, and I think 2 or 3 of them have been featured in the New York Times as sort of breakthrough companies in those spaces. So we have a lot of shots on goal for COVID.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, allow me to give another example of ourselves. A portfolio company of ours called Nanofos. It's a performance chemicals firm utilizing nanotechnology to create coatings. And as you can imagine, because of the crisis, the sales pipeline was put in risk. So both in the B2B channel of large projects that were postponed, as well as the B2C channel. So what we did to respond to the challenge of the crisis was to sit down together with the management and capitalize on their experience and their intellectual capacity to introduce a new product range regarding sanitizers and cleaners. So within 3 months from brainstorming and basic conception, we managed to put in the market more than 15 SKUs. We review the branding, the packaging, and all of that, not plain sanitizers, but sanitizers enhanced nanotechnology. And actually, we're going to file a patent with MOFO, the New York office. And it was a very tough project, and put down our relationship with the management. We sit down, we took decisions, we roll up the sleeves, and within 3 months we managed to launch a new SKUs and completely new business unit. And actually, this is going to be a case at Harvard with Linda Applegate is overviewing that the case writing. So it was very good opportunity to make a crash test in our relationship with also the management of the companies under this crisis, and see how things are moving in tough times, which did well. It was okay. It went well.
I could talk about the three companies. I mean, we are in various industries, and I can tell you some industries have been hit very hard, like fashion, for example. We're active in the fashion industry, but fashion right now is very difficult. But since this panel is about biotech, the three companies that we know really well, they're all different stories. The first one, Epibone, the bone regeneration, that was hit very, very hard by the crisis because it's all about R&D. It's they don't have EBITDA yet. It's all about the FDA and our R&D, and of course things have had to be shut down. People not being able to go to the office means some of the experiments are in danger, and the company will be fine because we have a great bunch of investors. But that's biotech when it's about FDA approval, if it has nothing to do with COVID, has suffered. Number two, Oi Health, it's a telemedicine company, and what was great about it is it was in telemedicine before telemedicine was a thing. About 3 years ago, they started this idea of telemedicine because they focus mostly on Latin America and on Spanish-speaking audience, and they felt that that kind of population did not have access to good medical advice. So they started with telemedicine, and now, of course, because telemedicine has boomed, it's been a direct beneficiary of a lot of attention. And finally, Sorrento Therapeutics, the ticker is SRNE on NASDAQ, was a cancer company that had then made an acquisition in non-opioid pain management, which was a thing about a year ago or two, because opioids are, as you know, are very addictive and have all kinds of problems. However, some of the R&D has translated into COVID applications. And if you ever look at this stock, this was a company at around $2 per share, which is now trading at $5 and even reached $7, just on the basis of some COVID announcements that they've made. I think it's because the management is not only very smart, but it's in many things, and it saw the opportunity to apply some of its body of research into for the benefit of the COVID R&D. And so that's been a good beneficiary some days when the stock goes up, but then other days, because it's too early to make any kind of real, concrete announcements about things, whether they're working or they're not working, it goes down with the market, and it's taking us on a crazy ride from 2 to 5 to 3 to 4 to 7 to, but it's been fun. So biotech is obviously a really exciting area to be involved in right now.
I'll jump in. So we're a health tech investor, which for us is really med tech and digital health. The vast majority of our companies focus on enterprise health systems, which is not an easy place to be selling to right now. As you can imagine, the C-level executives at those organizations are heads down. It's sort of like all COVID all the time. So getting them to look at new platforms is not easy. And the reality is that sales cycles for most of our companies are pushing out. Healthcare systems, as most people know, are losing a lot of money right now. One of the health systems that we work closely with is losing $100 million a month. So getting in front of them to look at new things is hard in the first place. And then the budget is the next issue. As one of the head of innovation said to us, it's all about cost right now in capital letters. So, there's no easy way to sugarcoat it. If you're a startup, you've got to be thinking about extending your runway right now and surviving through all this. And I think, Elena, your question sort of highlights the fact that I almost think there are 3 buckets of companies right now. Companies that truly have a tailwind because of COVID. And I'll give you 2 examples of those. Companies where this is clearly a headwind, there's no getting around it. And then I think there's this 3rd bucket of companies which are trying to morph their value propositions to fit the pandemic universe. I call them the COVID contortionists. Unfortunately, I think that's usually pretty sophisticated investors will sleuth out that your value proposition for COVID maybe isn't really that compelling. But I think a lot of companies feel like they need to make hay while the sun shines. It's probably a mistake for the vast majority of companies. But we hear, geez, probably 1,000 pitches a year from startups, and it's sort of frightening how many of them will say, oh yeah, no, COVID is great for us. And it only takes a handful of questions to realize, no, COVID's not so great for you, right? You're not going to get through this budget cycle. Your sales cycle, we have companies who've extended their sales forecasts out 12 months. Those are the ones who are being realistic. So two quick examples of companies that I think really do have tailwinds. We have a company called Asparia. It automates workflows and patient communication, makes it really simple for a provider to figure out who among their patient population they need to reach out to, what messages need to be sent. A particular example for COVID was they went live in less than 24 hours in a healthcare system that wanted to screen patients before they came in for their visits to determine whether or not they had COVID-like symptoms. If they had those COVID-like symptoms, they wanted to pivot from an in-person visit to a telehealth visit. Great use case, very strong management team, and they've been just gaining tremendous momentum from similar types of automating similar workflows now that healthcare systems need to deal with this remote patient population. Another great example of a company that has the wind at its back is called Elemento. It's a point of care on-demand training platform. So now you have frontline providers in positions they probably haven't been in the past. There's no opportunity to bring them into a room and teach them how to do procedures correctly, how to put on your PPE, the right way to do a nasal swab. I never knew you could do a nasal swab wrong, but trust me, you can. So people need to be trained in the proper way of doing even simple procedures like that. And guess what? Doing it in 60 seconds on your mobile phone is an ideal way to train those frontline providers. So for them, COVID truly has been the wind at their back. And then finally, maybe one that's not going so well, we have a genomics platform. It enables providers to use genomic information for pharmacogenomic decision-making right at the point of care. It's a very compelling platform. Yet, that's one of those examples where the providers are heads down saying, sorry, don't have the bandwidth to look at this right now. One of the heads of innovation that we do a lot of work with, huge Dreamit supporter, has probably piloted close to 10 of our companies, just said, hey, Adam, love Dreamit companies. I'm spending all day, every day sourcing ventilators right now. So you'll forgive me if I don't want to talk to your companies at the moment. So that kind of gives you maybe a sense of the good, the bad, and the ugly for what's going out there in the health tech world.
Great.
I have a few more if you want. If not, we can move on.
Yeah, please share.
So I will give different examples just so that we keep it balanced. I can give examples of two blockchain companies that had tremendous success when, for the past 2 years, no one wanted to deploy their platforms. Now, all of a sudden, they were able to immediately scale, and they actually scaled internationally. One of them focused on clinical trials, and when the FDA, I think someone else mentioned the FDA can be good or bad, but in their case, it was excellent because the FDA allowed virtual trials and actually recommended virtual trials. So this company did blockchain, e-identity, full clinical trials management for the patient and for the institution and for the clinical research organization. So that was very nice. So that's one example that worked well. The second one does precision medicine and blockchain. And again, with COVID, finally people understood what does a good use case look like. Before, it was very difficult for people to understand how an international platform powered by blockchain and that also deploys AI and genomics, but for pharma industry, it wasn't bedside, just to Adam's point before, how it could play a role in international R&D. So again, due to COVID, all of a sudden, several use cases became highly eloquent. You didn't have to even pitch anymore, everybody understood. And then I think someone else gave the example, telemedicine, same thing. They had success before, but overnight, due to COVID, all the ambulatory offices, of course, were closed. And specifically two, I can give an example that focused on pregnant moms. They offered telemedicine for pregnant moms. So you can imagine no pregnant mom wanted to go to any office. So 3 examples where it worked really well. 2 others that I can share are also related to much more in-depth AI utilization for massive data sets. So I think, again, overall, we see that health tech did fairly well compared to other industries. That would be a summary. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you think that this COVID, the whole situation, thank you, sorry, Varya, just
No
do you think
worries.
that will boost the technology? And please, in general.
Yeah, I'm happy to actually combine both of those questions. My example is one of our portfolio companies. They're a diagnostic technology out of Harvard based on quantum physics, actually. So not traditional biochemistry, which is magical in a sense if you go deeper in this market, because traditional biochemistry requires multitude of sample preparation, like 8 steps, and that one just shutters that sample preparation and removes the problems of potential risks and wrong results. I believe COVID highlighted how important it is to have a correct test and timely and cost efficiently. So having them in our portfolio, we've witnessed how they were quick and actually focusing on seeing if their technology is capable of detecting not only traditional proteins, but also infectious diseases without PCR, without, again, different approach towards diagnostic. And what we found out that this technology not only can detect, but because it is a different technology, can combine both detection that the test is A positive, but it can also detect right away the immune reaction. So not only we can understand that the person is A, sick or not, we can understand how far along his immunity was hit and what should be taken into account for treatment. And that's exceptionally important for doctors at ER, because oftentimes we cannot understand if positive test means anything, and we should be looking at the person more carefully and predicting and actually preventing. So that's an innovation and a positive upside in expedition of such innovation while pandemic.
Okay, so what did you change? What did you change for your current portfolio companies in terms of cash runaway versus product advancement versus sales, go-to-market strategies? Like in general, how did you adjust to the COVID?
I can jump in on that one. I mean, first and foremost, it's really all about extending runways. We don't know what the COVID funding environment is going to look like. We certainly have companies who've had term sheets pulled, deals that have been retraded after the term sheets were signed. So I think we're still trying to figure out where all this lands. It's not a nuclear winter out there. We did 3 deals in the last 2 weeks. One of those deals raised more money at a higher price than we were expecting. So look, investors have to deploy capital. Deals are still getting done. On the other hand, there clearly are some investors who are pulling back. So you need to have 12 months at least of runway. And if you don't have that, you should be very aggressive right now in figuring out how to cut your spend, negotiating with your suppliers, all your contractors, your landlord, thinking about, are there cuts to your staffing that you need to make? Never an easy decision. And because obviously you can't thrive if you don't survive. So right now, I think it's incumbent, if you're the founder or CEO of a startup, to look at every possible way, even if it's painful, to extend your runway. And the other reason that's really important may not be as obvious, because I can tell you 6 months from now, when things finally, let's hopefully in 6 months from now, when things normalize, when you walk into an investor's office as an early stage company, they're going to ask you, what did you do during the COVID crisis to better manage your business? And if you don't say you took those sorts of aggressive steps, they're just going to look at you and assume you're not the kind of CEO they want to invest in.
Yeah, I can add as well. It's the same story. Yeah, extending runway and focusing on cash for most of the portfolio companies. In my case, and there is with the last question, there is a company which performed very well. It's not health related. It's in communication, so it's really removing noise from calls like this. It's work from home and call center. So and it's in a trend. So they're raising large Series A right now. That's the kind of exception. But the rest of the companies, yeah, it was I think the opportunity for the companies to refocus and to really understand what's necessary, what's not, and to become much leaner. For example, we also have company in food delivery which started growing, but they also had large costs, and now they are completely focused on profitability. So it's completely different focus and outlook. So profitability, resiliency, and making sure that you stay in the game until the time is improved.
In my opinion, you need to have a multi-pronged approach. I don't think sequence works. I've been working with a lot of companies to try to push them to do what everybody said, definitely extend your runway, but also think about pivoting. You can't be hoping that everything will just disappear and you'll resume business as normal. So I would suggest that even those that don't necessarily feel convinced that they have to pivot, at least to start thinking about how they would pivot if they have to, and how to realign the business, even if not pivoting completely. So in general, I would recommend doing all the strategies you mentioned, and then when they are sure that they need to implement, they can go full force. But I've seen a lot of people saying, like we heard Adam mentioning, that they just do nothing, hope that everything will go away. That's not going to be the case. There's going to be a large impact that for some industries can even last up to 24 months. So doing nothing and hunkering down does not work, I think. That's my opinion.
We invest very early in really value-based companies. Our portfolio is up across the board, but we're very hands-on with our portfolio and with our CEOs, and we also started talking about runway. The other part, though, is that we have 90 co-investors, and we felt that it was our responsibility for our CEOs to help them sort out what is likely to happen with those co-investors. We're also in the middle of raising another fund. So we took that as an opportunity to say, we know we want our portfolio companies in the next 36 months will raise about $360 or $380 million. We want about 50 some odd million of that. We're only raising a $100 million fund with a $150 million cap. So we have changed who we're talking to in terms of that fundraise to try and make sure that the investors we're talking to are investors who really like to do co-investments, and that just within our own LP base, we would have the capacity for that $350 million, because some of the funds are not going to be able to raise another fund, or they're going to be spending everything propping up things that are a mess. And we want our portfolio companies not to run into that challenge, which I guess I worry about that because I'm old and I saw that happen in 2001 and in 2008. And I'm sure a lot of other people who are panelists here saw the same thing, so.
I think a challenge for people who run accelerators like SOSV does is that the angel investor network is very uncertain right now, as all of us should be, about what the follow-on investment is going to look like. So as a result, we're actually slowing down our pace of graduation, and we're spending this year is the year we're giving more love to our startups than ever before, even though we've always given them a ton of love, because we may spend, instead of the 3 to 6 months or 4 to 6 months that we normally spend with a cohort, we may spend 7 to 12. And helping them with their business development, helping them further with additional cash if necessary at the accelerator stage. We give $250,000 at the accelerator stage typically. If there are no angel investors, in many of our accelerators, it's not really angel investors anyway, it's seed investors, and we're seeing less of an issue there. People that have capital want to deploy the capital into strategically important companies. But on the angel side, we're seeing everybody's putting their hands in the pockets, and I can fully understand why.
If we have time, I have something to share as well. So majority of all, it's like the whole portfolio of Brava, it's a mobile app company. So it's a B2C sector, and we have several companies in health, fitness, nutrition, mental well-being. Because of COVID, actually the user pattern is dramatically changed. Nowadays, everybody's sitting home, working from home, and just like this picture lasts 4 months. What we see, it's a great opportunity for our customers, because the usage of mobile apps, specifically in fitness, nutrition, mental well-being, changed, and we suggested our clients, our companies, to increase the marketing budget on paid user acquisition. And majority of our companies, like in our portfolio, they almost double their revenue during these last 2.5 months. Because of that, it was not planned, of course, but the reality is that because everybody working and just like not leaving home, we see that for this type of companies, this is a great opportunity to continue growing and just like to have more customers, more paying customers. Of course, it's information asymmetry right now, because from other hand, a lot of retail companies struggling, and they cannot spend more marketing budget on user acquisition on Facebook, on Google. But for mobile first companies, this is a great season, not only in digital health, but also for gaming companies, for app util companies. So like we see that, yeah.
Great. So what about this question, corporate VC versus financial VC? What COVID has surfaced having them in startups cap table? Any ideas?
I'm sorry, Elena, you cut out. Might you say that again?
Yeah, can you repeat the question exactly?
Corporate VC versus financial VC. So how having them in a startups cap table, how during COVID those different VCs acted? Different types of VCs.
Well, I'll just say that corporate VCs, depending on which sector, like if they're in the food sector or some of the, it really depends on the sector. Some of the sectors are doing great. A lot of the in health, it's iffy. If you're doing pharmaceuticals and you can't do any trials and everything is going to shit, you may actually, because you can't do clinical trials right now, blah, blah, blah. Everything is really uncertain. And so they're maybe cutting back on some of their spending, et cetera. So it's not the same opportunity. It's not the clarity that people like to have when they're thinking of innovation. A lot of people talk about this COVID period as when innovation will stop. I actually don't think of it that way, but I think for corporations, there's a tendency to go insular and think of what's the core business and shut off other things unless they're really high pain points. So I think it's probably net effect is to take more corporates out of the game in the short period. But for those that are engaged, that have money is flowing, it's a good time to engage with those corporates. In general, like you know, other VCs, other financial investors like to see other financial investors on the cap table because they have the same motivations, right? There is not this sort of possibility that the corporate is redirecting the company to serve their own needs or to get side benefits that take the startup off the target, you know, the general purpose target rather than the corporate's own initiatives and their corporate's own strategies. So that all is very much an it depends situation, because obviously some corporates are spectacular corporates to get involved in the future possibilities of a company. And a lot of VCs also love to have corporates in because it also opens up a possible acquisition path, a possible exit strategy. So it's very dependent on the corporate and how active they are and how helpful they are to the company. There's a lot of different types of corporates out there.
Yeah, maybe I'll just add to Sean's comment. I think if you're a late seed or a Series A company, be very thoughtful about getting involved with corporate VC. As Sean said, there are good ones, but there are also bad ones. And a lot of companies pursue corporate VC for the wrong reasons, which a lot of times is just some sort of validation that a big company is interested in my platform. But the vast majority of the time, you're not negotiating from a position of strength with those corporate VCs. So, you know, we encourage our companies to keep a nice warm relationship and keep those VCs, you know, apprised of their progress. But generally speaking, we find it, you know, those investors, you know, a lot of times are kicking tires, trying to get information, but are not going to write a check unless they can put a pin in a map when they know they're going to be able to launch your product. And, you know, that investment, you know, is going to be accretive in the near term. So, you know, I'd say be at least a little afraid of jumping into bed with a corporate VC. I don't think it's as bad as it used to be, where someone would see a corporate VC on your cap table and they'd go, well, if they don't buy you know, it's no good, we're out. I think that, you know, that has changed now, where it's much more acceptable to have a corporate VC on your cap table. But it still does raise questions. You know, if you got that corporate VC in your seed or your Series A and they don't come back in for your next round, that's going to raise a lot of questions. So I think a lot of startups don't think about the downstream consequences. They're just sort of focused on the near term of, wow, you know, if JJDC wants to come into my company, man, I must have something really good. But you got to be careful, because it can be a little bit like the two happiest days in a boat owner's life, right? The day you buy it and the day you sell it. Well, the day you close it's your happiest day, and your worst day is when they don't buy it or they don't come into your next round. So I think it pays to be more mindful about those sort of corporate VC relationships.
I can add that I agree. It's a little bit like dating. I think you want to talk to many corporate VCs, but don't actually marry one. Just get them for information, so that you understand what could possibly be your exit strategy down the line. So you know you're not doing something that is completely, you know, unacceptable. You just want to increase your chances of talking to corporations down the line for a potential exit. But if you marry one of them too soon, then it really diminishes your options. There's really no other way. And, you know, they change their minds. At least with a venture capital fund, you know that they're in business, and that they're in business to make money, and that they're predictable to the extent that you understand, you know, when is their investment period and when they're going to have an exit and what are the returns. Venture funds are very upfront about all of those expectations. So you have to worry just about the chemistry with the people. But with a corporate VC, they could change their mind next year. They could not exist next year. They could completely, the people could be gone, you know, as opposed to partners in funds that are going to be there for the duration. So I think it's kind of a very slippery slope. It's just an easy trap to fall into. And that's where my pitch for, you know, working with advisors comes in, because as entrepreneurs, it might be easier to get in the door some of these corporates because of the way they're set. I mean, they're set for customer service in general, corporations. while funds tend to be more difficult to reach, and it's hard to get through. But if you have the right advisor or counselor or someone with relationships helping you, I think it's best to deal with financial people early on, and then keep the corporate umbrella or exit for later.
Okay.
Amen, Julio. Well said. Amen.
Thank you. But I agree with everything you said, and also Sean. I mean, the only thing I haven't agreed with is Amy's definition of old. You may remember that she said she was old. If she's old, man, forget it. It's just, yeah.
In the end, though, like, I think you guys maybe could correct me if my stats are out of date, but I think for Series A companies, it's like 3% actually have the magical IPO. 80% are M&As by corporates, and 17% or so are like other financial players buying, hedge funds and other things buying out companies, PE firms buying out companies in those cases to take them further. So in the Amy, you probably can correct me with the stats, but it's like the outcome is definitely going to be an M&A in most cases for the firms. So having those corporate relationships does matter.
I completely agree. We saw a change, I think, in the last few months in the corporate investors in funds. So one of the things we always say is in our investment thesis, these are early stage companies. They have to be able to exit well in any market. It means that we're focused on companies that are liable to be an M&A event or an acquisition, not an IPO. And when we were saying that in January, you could see some of the corporate and institutional investors that just shut them right down. Family offices were more excited, and now they think, wow, that was a great strategy. So I think, just that shift in the public markets was helpful for that kind of investment thesis that acknowledges that exactly what Sean is saying.
Also, like, even for us as venture capitalists, like 20 to 30% of our LPs are actually corporates, because they want to see the scope of what the investments are and what the future it holds and what the direction is. That's several dozen companies that are trying to look at what the trends are and trying to identify companies. So they are looking to invest in innovation, because frankly, if they don't, they're dead. It's the shortest period of time in history. I think, 13 years before somebody gets onto the S&P 500 and when they're irrelevant and forced off the S&P 500 because, their blockbuster video model no longer applies. So they have to continue innovating. They know that the innovation comes through startups. And that's, so the smart ones, I mean, that's why so many corporates are being so heavily involved in VC today, whereas before it was kind of a rare thing 15 years ago.
Great, thank you so much. And we have just maybe 5 minutes. Can you please share what has changed in your investment strategies, if anything, due to COVID? Will you do more online pitching from now on? Will you invest if you never met a person in real life? Will the deals be faster? How this whole process changed? Thank you.
I can say that even before, I was mostly doing work virtually, and I think now much more people are amenable to that before were not. So I can see a future where much more hybrid opportunities will be available, that not everybody will demand face-to-face first. So I've seen a tremendous shift, particularly because our work is international, that 85% of people that before wanted only face-to-face deals now are willing to do it. So yes, it also shortened the length of time and ability to connect with people that otherwise would have never been able to. So.
I would say we have also experienced that, what Ingrid has described. Lots of the meetings are now virtual, and especially in the pre-deal period where we discuss terms, on evaluating the company, on potential collaborative dynamics, etc. But I would say, okay, post the transaction, and in order to work really as partners and roll up the sleeves, sharpen the pencils, and get things into action, you really need to maintain a physical contact, post the transaction at least. Most of the pre-transaction meetings can be done online, not the final ones, the concluding ones, but it's a reality that most of the things have been converted to virtual meetings. Yeah.
And I can say in our case, in my case, a lot of the meetings even before were conducted virtually as well, and we operated. We're a team of 3 partners based in London, Armenia, Yerevan, and Singapore. So even between ourselves, we operated as a virtual team, and now this is going to accelerate, and it's becoming more acceptable for every person to have this sort of interactions and to accept that as the option. And yeah, I agree that physical connection is important, but that can happen after the deal is done. So I think I'm currently meeting a lot of people, just continuing in the same way, and it's pretty productive, I shall say.
And for us at SOSV, running accelerators, we've always probably 90% of the teams that we invest in a $250,000 check. So it's not a very big check, but a $250,000, 90% of those deals, we never saw the team in person. We always did it with Skype and Zoom now, of course. And so that's sort of a repeating pattern. For follow-on checks of up to $1 million, $1.5 million, $2 million, I would, I definitely really want to be meeting the people and spending a lot of time with them. That's with our accelerators. We spend a huge amount of time with people, and there's nothing quite as good as being present and working with people shoulder to shoulder for weeks on end or months on end to know what they're like for bigger checks. So I do think it's hard. I've talked with a bunch of VC friends that are investing at the later stages, their first checks being 2 or 3 million, and they are saying they are doing some deals. So it is happening, but I personally would be very uncomfortable with it.
Let's see. Maybe you change your mind. Okay.
Also, I've talked to a friend VC out of Boston today, and they're later stage, and same comment of it's so important to see how the team, who is the personality of the founder, and how they communicate with each other. Because like one thing is their perfectly rehearsed pitch, another thing is what's the real life communication, what's the energy between the teammates, how well are they. We definitely want to spend more time with founders, go for lunches and see how they react in unusual situations as well. Because I mean, COVID is an emergency, but then it's like, oh, life is up and down, and how do you hold that, and how do you have your leadership stance, and how do you lead the team even in a time when you have no idea where your company is going. And that's something to be tested, and it's still tricky to do online. Hopefully technology will get there, but yeah, for now it is what it is, but bigger checks for sure, meeting in person.
Okay, great. Let's move to pitching then. Thank you very much. It was a very interesting discussion. So our first project is Lemonade. Let me promote him. It's 5-minute pitch, 5-minute Q&A. For all our startups who are here present, guys, please watch the time. Samir, are you with us? You can start.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, nice to meet you, everybody. My name is Samir Mastaki. If you can, Yelena, if you can let me share the screen, you should give me
Yes, you
permission.
can share. One moment,
No
please.
problem.
Sorry.
Yeah, I can take. I'll try to take the virtual background off. There we go. Okay, excellent. First of all, it's a pleasure to meet everybody. My name is Samir Mastaki, and I'm based in the Republic of San Marino, and I run Project Lemonade, which comes obviously from the, from the saying that when life gives you lemons, you need to really make some lemonade. So the point of this project is that we've been working a lot with the Hospital of the Republic of San Marino for a number of different projects, including COVID, and I'll get to that in a second. But what we've noticed is that there's a lot of friction in the way patients are managed. Most importantly, there are really two different worlds, right? You have the private healthcare and the public healthcare, and the drivers are extremely different. I know I'm speaking with a predominantly American audience, but here in Europe, public health is, you can count just as many public hospitals as you can count private ones. But what we've noticed is that they all kind of run through the same issues. The problems are excessive hospitalizations. You have from 7 a.m. onwards, you've got hundreds of elderly who really don't know what to do with their time, and they kind of just go and sit in line because their free healthcare package allows them to bother any doctor they want at any time. There's a lot of issues with this, though, because funds for healthcare are always diminishing, and therefore you end up having less and less time and resources to devote to each of these patient visits. So then it means that non-urgent issues are taking the place of more urgent issues, and it's becoming difficult for a lot of different countries. And we've noticed this a lot in the Southern European world mostly. So you end up having overcrowded hospitals. You have issues with prevention. In the past, it used to be much easier to have your family doctor kind of act as a screen for prevention, helping you out in sort of navigating through your, through your different symptoms into trying to have a better lifestyle so that you don't need to end up in the hospital. And the result of this is that, patients now are feeling abandoned, right? There is a bit of an inefficient triage. It's easy for patients who are hospitalized to be sent home beforehand. And in general, there's a lot of wastefulness in the system. So just a couple of numbers. We've got, something like 3.2 million diabetics in Italy, right? We have a lot of clinics that are private when we say private official clinics in Italy, we mean these are clinics that are paid for by the public healthcare system, even though they're run by private. And, we have an intersection of a lot of factors. We have Internet of Things, so Internet of Medical Things is growing tremendously. And a lot of different telemedicine and telehealth, solutions are coming up, which are proven already to be a very, very large saving opportunity. So when you're putting all of these things together, we are thinking, why don't we combine all of this and try to figure out a way to make the lives of doctors a little bit easier? And so what is Lemonade? Lemonade is an aggregator of different wearables, which may be used together with artificial intelligence to help different types of doctors and different sort of divisions of the hospitals manage their patients better. So in general, we are currently starting, as of next week, we're starting a test. And as a matter of fact, I will have to leave very, very shortly because there is literally the Minister of Health of the Republic of San Marino that is waiting for me. We will be discussing we are having an MOU signing tonight because we will actually launch a complete collaboration with the Healthcare Authority of San Marino, where we will work with every single doctor that they provide us to create solutions in particular for their divisions. So, just to start with a very quick overview of the way the technology works, basically what we do is we have a semaphore, we have a traffic light. The original traffic light was devised on the basis of the Safe Paths application from MIT, with whom we collaborate. As we started in February, trying to help the Republic of San Marino fight the infection. San Marino was the worst in the world in terms of infections. So we decided to try to give a hand to solve all of this, right? So we began with this, with this opportunity. We created a semaphore that is basically giving different levels of sort of danger, basically, and a different level of care for each status. Then what we did is we converted this not only for COVID, but now you can do it for chronic illness patient monitoring. You can do it for pre and post-surgical monitoring. You can do this for epilepsy, for diabetes, for heart failure, etc. So actually what we start with, our beachhead, is the pre and post-surgical monitoring. It's a fairly easy and straightforward way to start. The head surgeon is one of our advisors. And in essence, what they are interested in is to use a wearable or a combination of. So we will start with Oura Ring, which is a Finnish wearable company. So what they will do basically is they will get a baseline a week before the surgery. They have a baseline of parameters. Our AI elaborates a number of flags for them. Then the surgery happens, and through the app, we are able to constantly monitor the patient by having a dynamic surveying where the doctor is able to define a number of questions that the patient has to answer. If the semaphore is yellow, it means that the person is a little bit in danger, so there may be more questions. If the semaphore becomes red, then the patient is in serious danger, at which point the doctor then decides to actually see the patient in person. So we are developing this as we go right now. This is really a live situation. We are getting a lot of traction. We have a lot of partnerships currently. Of course, the Healthcare Authority of San Marino is the most important one, but we work also with MIT. I heard a number of panelists that have relationships with MIT. We are working with them with respect to the COVID aspect. Have other collaborations going on with World Health Innovation Summit and Skoltech, which is an important Russian American joint venture. It's between MIT and Russian Finance Ministry. This is our roadmap. Really quickly, so we're starting next week with a pilot with,
Amir, you have just 30 seconds left.
I'm finishing up. Thank you so much. I'll wrap this up. So we have an interesting roadmap ahead. I will share the slides with you so you can check it later. But in essence, we plan to launch a full modularity by the autumn of this year. We're using the month of July to test the pre and post-surgical, as well as cardiac, cardiac issues. There's a T-shirt wearable that we're working with. And, hopefully by autumn 2020, we will have billing customers. This is our advisors. Most important advisor is Samir Suleimanov, who's the head of strategy at the World Bank Group. Michaela Santini from San Marino East. She runs the liaison with the World Health Organization. Enrico Santos from Bayer, Shlomit Dechel from FIO Corporation in Canada, and Željko Tekic, who's a professor in innovation at Skoltech. And this is our team. We're a bunch of nice and funny people that are trying to do our best to help out with a lot of issues. We are all based in the Republic of San Marino, and thank you so much for your attention. I'm here for any questions.
Any questions?
When you were starting this company, did you look out to competitive solutions, and how do you think you compare with those competitors?
Absolutely. So the closest competitor to us is a company called Empatica, which is actually located in Cambridge, and it has also an Italian component to it. Their system is a little bit more on the predictive side, and they are using their own hardware. So they create their own hardware. We've also explored the possibility, and in fact, we're talking a little bit with a few people from Skyworth and Foxconn as well. But what we believe our competitive advantage is is that we're actually working with a completely agnostic position when it comes to wearables. So we can work with pretty much any wearable we want. The important thing is what problems are we solving for which type of discipline. So, you know, we're starting from the inside of the hospital, and as we solve their problems, we are creating different modules that are useful for different other customers. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Samir.
Thank you very much. It was really a pleasure. I'll run, but if there's anything, Yelena has my contacts. Thank you.
Yes, I will definitely put you in contact with anyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, our next speech is Intramune. Mike, are you with us?
Yes, I am. I did something strange when you joined me in. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent.
5 minutes, Mike.
Okay, great. Let me share my screen. All right, can you see that now?
Yeah.
Excellent. Great. So I'm Michael Nelson. I am the CEO of Intramune Therapeutics. We're a New York-based company, biotech company, and we're developing treatments for food allergies that are delivered while you brush your teeth. We just raised 1.4 million on our Series A. We've determined to upsize it by another $1 million or $2 million that we're looking to close. By the end of July, we're going to be filing our IND, and then we'll be looking to raise about 10 million later on in the year. What we do is really very simple. We take the allergens that people are allergic to, put them into a specialized toothpaste, and you get your allergy immunotherapy when you brush your teeth. This is really important because we know allergy immunotherapy works if you do it consistently, and the one thing people do consistently is brush their teeth. Food allergies are a huge global problem. There's about 250 million people affected. In the US, it's 32 million, 17 million in the EU. And there's really 8 foods that account for about 90% of food allergies. So that's our pipeline. Our first target is peanut, but the other 8, because there's sesame is kind of up and coming as the 9th, is probably gonna be 2 products. So really 3 products cover about 90% of the market. In the US, there's about 6 million people with peanut allergies, similar numbers in the EU. The rates are increasing, unfortunately. And if you accidentally eat a peanut, there's really nothing you can do but get yourself epinephrine and go to the emergency room. So people live with constant fear. There's a lot of lost productivity. There's a lot of just missing out on life. Unfortunately, there's a huge social burden. So patients, practitioners, payers are all desperately seeking protection from accidental exposure. Up until January 31st of this year, there was no product approved for any food allergy. The first product approval was from a company called Aimmune. They have a product called Palforzia. It's being priced at close to $11,000 per year. Wall Street estimates are about 1.7 billion peak sales. And their product, it's a peanut powder. You break open the capsule, pour it on your semi-solid food, and eat. It has all the adverse events you would expect from eating what you're allergic to, and it actually triples the risk of what you're trying to protect against, which is needing emergency epinephrine. So we estimate there's about 1 million people as a serviceable market. So the number of peanut allergic is much higher, but we think we could get long-term about 1 million people on product. This is a product, once you're on it, you stay on it. Most patients, it's a lifelong product. You won't find a biotech company as early as we are that is as de-risked, and that's because we know if you put peanut protein into the oral mucosa, it does desensitize you, and we know from a study using our base that for respiratory allergies, which tend to be much safer, that if you use our base product with allergens, you desensitize people. There was a study targeting just the sublingual area. It's about 1/14 of the total surface area of the mucosa, using 2 milligrams of peanut protein, and it worked as well as Palforzia without any incidence of epinephrine. We actually target not only 14 times the surface area, we contact areas that have more of the immune cells that we're trying to contact. So we expect actually better efficacy. We could get our dosing higher. You got the built-in compliance, and of course you spit it out, so you avoid a lot of the adverse events. The 2 competitors that are really out there right now are Aimmune. It's worth about 1.2 billion, lots of adverse events, About 20% of patients drop off very quickly because they just can't handle it. We expect to pick those up. Long term, we expect to pick up those patients as well once they get tired of eating this powder that they have to add to their food every day. The other company is DBV. At one point, they were worth $2.4 billion when they were considered the safe alternative. Unfortunately, the product is not particularly effective, and it's been having several issues with getting through the FDA. The patch comes off. The patch is designed to stick to your skin. It actually irritates your skin and allows the peanut proteins to cross over the skin. We have a great intellectual property portfolio. We have about 24 patents to date, covers covers the US, EU, China, India. We just got Brazil. The first patents that have been issued are toothpaste plus allergens for immunotherapy. And the second is how we go about stabilizing those proteins so that, that this can be a product that's available to people right in, it replaces their daily toothbrushing, or at least one of their daily toothbrushings. We actually found that our formulation is more stable than peanut protein alone in a flour, which is what Palforzia's product is. In terms of where we are, we have exclusive rights for the oral mucosal immunotherapy food allergy platform. We've developed the formulation. We've met with the IND for our pre-IND meeting. We have the stability study results in hand. We've raised money from a number of angel groups. We're looking to close the Series A preferred shortly. As I said, we're upsizing. We have enough to complete the IND in hand already. The phase 1B study, we have a quote from a CRO that they're going to keep the price under $500,000. So if we could bring in even another $1 million, we're set with that 1B. That's a huge value inflection point. We will be kicking off the Series B once we have the IND in hand, and we're targeting product approval around 2025. We have a great team. Eric is on as well. He's our Chief Scientific Officer. Both of us have well over 20 years of experience. Michelle Mantia does a lot of our operations. Abid is our Chief Regulatory Officer. Tanya Winders from Allergy and Asthma Network is fantastic. She is unfortunately a mom of people with food allergies as well, but she just gives us a great insight into all the stakeholders. Dr. Reisacker is actually the inventor of our technology, and we have some of the top names who helped us develop our clinical trial protocols. Dr. Burks is really the father of food allergy, and Dr. Fleischer and Greenot, they all helped us develop our clinical trial protocols. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak today. We are looking to bring in some money quickly. We have everything we need for the IND, but we'd love to get the money to complete the phase 1B. And then later on in the year, we'll be raising money for CMC work and for our phase 2 studies. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions?
Nobody else has a question? What's the structure of the round? How much are you looking to raise? You said how much you're looking to raise now, another $1 million, but what's the valuation? And
yeah, so the money that's come in, the post money with the 1.4 that's come in already is currently is 17.6 million. We'd look to raise another 1 to 2 at the current valuation. Once we have that IND in hand, we expect the valuation to go up. And that phase 1B study, this is very different than a typical phase 1B study. We're testing it in people who are peanut allergic. It's to see whether or not we could handle the updosings. We have a lot of strategic interest. The question is, does something crazy happen when you put peanut protein into a toothpaste base and brush your teeth with it? We know from respiratory allergies from about 700 people who use it, we've had no issues. But that for whatever reason, food allergies are more dangerous. So that's the question. Once we have that, this is a company worth a few $100 million.
I have a lot more questions for your phase 1B,
sure.
but not for right
now. Sure, I'm happy to answer them.
What's your value proposition to the? I mean, what's the price that your product costs for consumers?
Yeah, so this is going to be insurance, reimbursed. So Palforzia is over $10,000 a year as their pricing. For most patients, they're going to need to be on it for a lifetime, at least 3 to 5 years.
Are any insurance companies already pre-approving Palforzia, or
yeah,
are they just saying, "Hey, we'll buy you 2 EpiPens"?
Yeah, no. So they are. They've talked with about 75–80% of insurance companies. They are starting to roll out coverage. That coverage is expected to be in place over the next 12 months or so. You know, they obviously hit an issue with COVID pandemic because their product, the first time you're in it, you have to do several updosings in the doctor's office. So you have to spend the whole day in the doctor's office. Nobody's doing that right now, but they will be rolling out. They will have insurance coverage. We have two arguments to actually have higher insurance coverage. I'm not saying we would actually seek a higher price, but insurance companies pay for compliance, and we have that built-in compliance with because it's toothbrushing, and they also pay for reduced adverse events. And our, we don't expect any need for epinephrine. I mean, you'll have it on hand, but we expect very minimal numbers of use of epinephrine, whereas about 14% of patients with palforzia end up needing epinephrine. So they're going to be sending patients to the emergency room. That's a big cost for the patient. There's a lot of fear for the doctor, a lot of doctor time, and then a lot of cost to the insurance company as well.
And how quickly do people wean themselves off your product?
Yeah, so this is a gradual desensitization. So we expect about 4 months of updosing, and then you're on maintenance. We think it will take about 9 months to a year to really hit the target where you could eat 1 to 2 peanuts, which is about 99% of accidental exposures. You stay on it for longer, you'll get more protection. That will level off at some point, but you lose the desensitization. It's not really very clear. If you've only been on it for a year or so, you could lose it within a few weeks. If you're on it for a few years, it may be longer. Some patients, they'll be able to eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches after a couple of years. Other patients, they'll need to be on it for potentially for a lifetime. So it really varies, but we do know that over time you do lose that desensitization.
Okay, thank you very much, Mike.
Thank you, Elena.
The panel. Phil, are you ready? Yeah. So our next project is Nicolette.
Hi, everybody. I'm just going to share my presentation here. Okay. So, oops. I'm Phil. I'm the founder of Nicolette, and we're based in Long Beach, California. We're a patient empowerment company, and what we mean by that is we rapidly educate patients to give them the competence and the confidence they need to drive their own healthcare journey. When patients are empowered, their health outcomes improve and costs are reduced. This is something I lived firsthand and why we started the company about 5 years ago. I had extremely premature twins. They were 25 weekers, so under 1.5 pounds each, very sick babies. And dozens of times throughout the journey, we had decisions to make as parents. And we had maybe a day to make some very serious decisions at times. And we needed rapid education to be able to do the right thing and to understand the consents we were signing, and also to be hands-on in the care of our children. But we didn't have that. So in hospitals, while there's excellent medical devices and all of that stuff, there is a complete lack of tools for patients and their caregivers to navigate the journey. So that's what we do. That's where we come in. Patients lack empowerment. Everyone on this call has either faced this themselves or someone who has. And it's not the provider. The doctors want patients to be able to be a bigger part of their own care, but they lack the resources. They don't have time to do this manually, and the tech is certainly not there. So we do 3 things in our tech. We take EHR data, electronic health record data, and translate that into things that are insightful for patients who are lay people and who are under a lot of stress and anxiety. So that's visualizations, and also the type of AI we use is called natural language generation. Transform that raw data into really easy to understand plain language. Curated education that's evidence-based and specific to the patient, and then engagement tools that really get patients at the center of their own care, or caregivers at their family members' care. Our first product, which we're launching now, is called NicoBoard, and it's specifically designed for parents of NICU babies. really obvious why we would choose to do that first. It's our story. We know it really well. NICU is also a really beneficial place to start for other reasons too. It's a really diverse inpatient experience. It's an ICU, but unlike an adult ICU, it's also a step-down unit, and it's also a rehab. So the breadth of like an inpatient experience is really all here, and that'll help us scale more cost efficiently as we move into other areas. Here's what the product looks like. So here you can see visualized data, natural language insights here that come from raw EHR data. If you've ever seen an EHR, you know that it's not going to be very helpful to patients, and it's actually pretty hard for doctors to use. We also have specific curated education that again is evidence-based and driven by the data. So parents are always seeing education that's relevant to their baby at the moment, and that's curated by the care team. So they're not consuming anything they shouldn't be. And then participation prompts and a tool we have called the diary that really adds some normalcy and beauty back into the process of having a baby when, the NICU kind of rips that away because it's such a harrowing experience. Our business model is B2B. So we sell to health systems, and we're also looking to expand into other areas. $21 per patient day. So it's SaaS model. Average deal will be about $250K per year. Average contract is 3 years long. At scale, the unit economics are really strong, in line with other SaaS products. Our first deal, we just signed in April. We generated revenue for the first time as of May. And that's CHOC Children's, which is one of the top children's hospitals in the United States. Our sales pipeline is 150 hospitals strong. Within that pipeline, about 42 million in ARR. And our average deal size in the pipeline is about 270K. We're going to scale from the NICU to house-wide inpatient applications, and then eventually outpatient. So this is about a 5-year horizon period that you're looking at with our TAM. Our team's really strong. We believe in 5 years, it'll be normal for these types of tools to be part of the care that providers give patients, not something that you have to go find on your own if you're a patient, not something that gets billed for. It's part of care. It's literally customer success, but for patients. Every other industry really believes in customer success and they invest heavily in it. Healthcare is going to get there too. It's going to happen, and we're the right team to lead the charge. Technical chops, patient story, medical chops, really great pedigree across the spectrum. COVID, since COVID is really a big theme today, I wanted to talk about it a little bit to say that, there is clearly a new normal. This has been discussed. The toothpaste is out of the tube when it comes to being able to provide care remotely. That's going to be happening. I mean, to give you an example of our first customer, CHOC, they went from 0 telehealth visits to 700 a week, in the span of a month. So what makes that kind of thing successful? It's not just being able to see each other or talk remotely. It's having patients and their caregivers be able to understand and apply insights so that they are more compliant, that they are able to have more success. And that's the part that we've done successfully already, and we think is the most important part. And so in terms of how we are shifting, we're speeding up our roadmap so that telehealth is part of the landscape this year versus next year. Our sales cycles did kind of slow for 2 to 3 months, but next year we think they'll actually be sped up quite a bit because there's a much bigger demand to put in tools in place like this now. And there you go.
Thank you. Questions?
Could I ask, I'm sorry. Could I get a little bit more information about the team?
Sure. So you know a little bit about me. Michelle McHale is a neonatologist and is our chief medical officer. The two of us met when my kids were in the hospital. He was actually the lead neonatologist for my son. Seth Brickman's former Microsoft, former Amazon, someone I've known for many years. I was with Canon for many years as a VP of Ops, and so we worked together in those days. Mindy Morris runs our patient education. She's a nurse practitioner, has been for many years, very successful. And then Tynan Svedets, our CTO, a lot of years of experience with EHR and HL7, FHIR, those types of really important back-end integration pieces. In our advisory team, Andrei Ostrovsky is the former head of innovation for Medicaid and CHIPS. Michael Clark, former Colorado Children's executive. Jay and John are both with Wavemaker 360, which was one of our previous investors.
Okay.
How long would you have you expect your average patient to be in the NICU, neonatal intensive care unit?
So
it's like 30 days or 12 days or any.
Well, so the range is quite long. It's you know, anywhere from a couple of days to like over 100. So it depends on when the baby's born and what the complications are. So an average though is like 30 days. And the average amount of time we're looking to reduce the stay by is about 3.8, so a little over 10%, which is a big benefit to hospitals from an ROI perspective. They save about $2,000 a day if they're paid based on a DRG or a bundle.
Great.
Okay, thank you, Phil. So we have our next presentation. The project is called Credence Genomics. Vas? Aividas. Vas?
Hi, can you hear me?
Hey. Yes, please.
Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Dr. Vaz Nyanam. I'm a long way off from everybody. I'm from Sri Lanka, which is in the Indian Ocean. And I am the CEO of Credence Genomics, and I'm now going to put my presentation up. A second. Okay, so Credence Genomics is basically a clinical genomics company, and we focus on local and global healthcare problems by providing cutting-edge diagnostics, which is cheap, or cost-effective, accurate, and very fast. We have been in the space for now, it would be 9 years now. And we started in 2011, and in this part of the world, we were one of the first initial commercial NGS sequencing facilities. But our idea was not to just be a sequencing facility, but to build a series of products that would be cost effective, because testing costs are very elastic in this part of the world. And we focused first primarily on what we call low-hanging fruit, which is infection. So tropical infection is a big problem here. We have a lot of tropical disease. And we started in 2011. We went through a series of local accreditations. And we built, including export permission to export to neighboring India. The idea there was to enter a much bigger market. India has a population of 1.7 billion and a very large private healthcare market. So in India, the market is roughly 80% private healthcare and 20% public, as opposed to Sri Lanka, which is 80% public and 20% private healthcare. So we were catering to both sides of the coin, as you could say. We have, in 2017, we basically entered the Indian market with a very big collaboration with Apollo Healthcare Group, one of the largest groups, private healthcare groups in the world. And we basically were able to use our operational experience with not just technology, but by creating a sales team, a regulatory team in India, along with the Apollo Healthcare Group, which then we had a registered contract with them for their 10,000 managed beds, 65 hospitals across 26 states in India. Apart from that, we were the first genomics unit to be registered by the government of Sri Lanka. And we have an umbrella cover for tests that we actually developed and we put out in the market. So we now serve in these two countries, and we have about 50 staff who are all molecular biologists and doctorates. We have a clinical core team, we have a chemistry core team, we have an informatics core team, and our sights are set on scaling into the Western Hemisphere. And we are now looking at FDA approvals for our infectious disease range of products. So what we have done is, in this Series A round, we're actually raising capital for our existing contracts so we can actually bring our tests into legacy systems. So we are at the moment providing these tests and competing against legacy tests like microbiology tests, PCR tests, RT-PCR tests. But we basically all our tests are done on NGS platforms. We have re-engineered a lot of chemistry so that these tests are much cheaper and they're more affordable, and we actually compete with those legacy tests. So I'm just going to go into the testing area, and one particular problem that we solve, which is sepsis and antimicrobial resistance. And our DXN1 range is a series of tests that cover pan identification for bacteria, pan identification for fungi, pan identification for viruses, including your coronavirus, all types of coronavirus. We also, since we're using next generation sequencing, we look at mutation rates and multi-strain, the multi-strain reporting, and we are able to identify any particular pathogen in any sample, and our promise is a 36-hour turnaround from the time the sample enters our facility. So some statistics on sepsis: they cause about 27 million cases worldwide, 9 million deaths associated with sepsis. 30% is because of antimicrobial resistance. And we are seeing the number of patients rise from 1 in 5 to 1 in 3 cases, even with not just admitted patients, but even OPD patients. So our business model is built on 2 models. One is test processing, and the second is franchising, where we franchise, build, operate, and transfer labs under our brand called D360. We have now signed 2 such franchises, one in Eastern Middle East and one in India. And we are now discussing 2 more franchises. The DXN1 range is a pan infectious disease range where we can identify any fungi, any bacteria, any virus, and now we are actually working on antibiotic sensitivity testing without having to reculture or regrow organisms.
I'm very sorry, you need to wrap it up. Sorry.
Okay. Over here, we are having a comparison with microbiology. This test has already been, is running commercially, both in India and Sri Lanka. We already have one study. We have other products also, one where we do fertility testing under the G-scan range for non-invasive prenatal testing and pre-implantation genetic sequencing. We also have a wellness product called GFIT. These are some of the information on the total addressable market. The infectious disease market is expected to, or sepsis market is expected to cause about 100 trillion plus in GDP by 2050. And we are hoping that tests like our diagnostic tests will actually reduce that loss, and we'd be able to then replace legacy testing. This is our team. We have myself, we have Professor Jennifer Pereira, who has had 4 decades of experience, Dr. Chandrasekharan, 6 decades, and we have a genetist, Dr. Padma Pani, and this team controls both operations in India and Sri Lanka. This is our roadmap. Because I'm running out of time, we have a detailed roadmap on how we're going to utilize funds, which we have been implementing and into multi-region segments, into multiple countries, and we are actually deploying product-wise. And when there's time, I could go into that. We're looking to raise about $1.5 to $2 million, and we have a proposed utilization that we have put forward for the $1.5 to $2 million we're looking to raise is for about 20% of the company.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Question. Very short Q&A session for this project.
Yeah, how much of your business is on services, and how much is it right now on licensing in terms of your actual revenues? Do you have any product sales, or is it all service revenue?
No, we have an R&D arm that does subcontracting for universities and research projects. So we've been actively generating cash flow. We have product sales for our infection, where we sell the master batch and the actual tests. Before COVID, we were actually bringing in samples. We have a green channel approval given by the government for us to test overseas samples. So I would say it is 20% servicing, 80% product.
Are you doing COVID testing?
We are now applying our VirFast product, which looks at DNA and RNA for the emergency use authorization segment.
And what are your revenues to date?
Well, the last 2 months has been bad, but we do about $400,000 in this region.
Per year or per month?
Per year.
Per year.
Yeah.
How fast can you scale? And what's your overhead when you scale? Like, what's the cadence that you can enter?
So right now we have 2 contracts. So one is the registered contract we already have, which is roughly about $2 million. And we have a new contract again for infectious diseases, which is about $2.5 million over the next 3 years. And we have been scaling slowly, but we need investment for machinery and more R&D, because one of the things that we do is to make the test affordable is we re-engineer most of the chemistry, because most of the chemistry is proprietary in terms of, let's say, one is metallic beads. We have to actually import it from the UK. So we can actually make our own. So we re-engineer most of that. And we do a lot of machine learning to speed up reporting. So investment into hardware. We already have a terabyte farm. We want to take it to a petabyte farm.
And do you have most of your revenues just considered to be in Sri Lanka and India, or are you intending for most of your revenues to be global?
So we want to go global. So we're looking not just for money, but someone who can help us to enter that space because we don't know that space. We're from this part of the world.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Vas.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. We'll be happy to introduce the project upon request of the investors. Our next project is Mindset Technologies. Christian, are you with us?
Hi, you should be able to hear me now.
Yes, we can.
Hi.
Thank you. Yeah.
Great to meet you. Wonderful evening here, close to Vienna. So I'm calling from Austria. Thanks for the invitation, Elena. Yes, what I'm presenting today is a company and foundation. So if you're asking what is our turnover, what is the revenue yet, I can tell you 0 exactly at the moment. But we are starting on,
okay,
so the first question already answered, but we are starting on various fronts. And that's actually what makes us a little bit faster than we usually would be with the topic we have. But just let me share my screen and then you'll see what I'm talking about.
Great.
Yes, I'm the founder of the company Mindset. I have a background in neuroscience. Worked in neuroscience, especially in electrophysiology and neuropsychology for 7 years, 8 years. Also doing a lot of research. I've been, I must say, the last 20 years in business consulting, working for companies like McKinsey, Directia, or even my own company. And the last station was a company owned by Red Bull. I was innovation manager there, and then I came up with the idea again that I was carrying around a couple of years, just yeah, so to say, reading the mind. And you know, we have a very basic technology here that enables us to put our, let's say, our fingerprint in different verticals. You will see what I mean, but we're talking especially about the health sector here because it's, for me, it's the most important one, and that's where we are finally going with our data model. So what we're doing is we're putting human attention in focus. And how we're doing this, we have a vision where we say we focus on the attentional functions of humans, especially, and especially in medicine in the long run. It has to do with the fact that the eyes are really a gate to the brain. They're actually not only a gate to the brain, they're part of the brain. And many eye movements and also the lid movements correlate pretty reliably, not only in laboratory, but also in the field, with hormone levels, with neurotransmitter levels, for instance, with dopamine, also with cerebral blood flow in different regions of the brain. So what we are doing here is we're looking with our special devices at the eye, at the lid, at the pupils here, at the size, at the different speeds of closure, for instance, at the combination of all those signals to a syndrome. We are evaluating with machine learning approaches, with deep learning, and we are getting an insight into brain function. And this this insight is in the medical sector actually on 2 fields. One helps us to make skills better, for instance, in training for surgical training, or we're starting with a research project with neurological trainings, for instance, setting electrodes for measuring the speed, the velocity of nerve transmission. And we are also thinking of using cognitive enhancement trainings. And what we are doing is we're collaborating with companies where we can put our IP into it, where we say, okay, you know what, we know the vigilance of this guy here when he's doing his cognitive enhancement trainings. Now let us enhance your enhancement training. Let us make it better and let us make it individualized. What is the basic idea? The basic idea is that you all know probably, well, very probably, pulse meters. A pulse meter is a proxy for electrocardiogram. And if I think of the Finnish company Polar, they're on the market for decades already. And their pitch mainly was that they have an accuracy that is as high as a professional electrocardiogram. I must say we can never be the same way like a EEG is working, but what we try to do and what we will achieve with two different devices, with those goggles here and with a camera that is watching the eyes and doing a lot of excellent machine vision, we will refer to cognitive functions in attention like arousal, vigilance, direction of the gaze, startle reaction, emotional reactions that we can see by the distribution of blood on the face. Yes, we can look under the skin with the cameras. And this is where we're going to. We're making something that is pretty invasive. We're taking it to a non-invasive function, making it available for different applications. That could be also in your household where you say, okay, I'm 60 years old, I'm looking at the computer and I want to know if I have a risk for a degenerative disease, like for instance, Parkinson or Alzheimer's. And we know from the laboratory that there is a really strong correlation, and there are precursors that you can see from the eyes. And I'm talking about actually years before it actually starts. That has to do with this neurotransmitters, with dopamine. Yeah, and this is what we're aiming at, to have a software as a service that can be sold to professionals, can be sold in different verticals. So what you see here actually is the vertical from esports. And esports is great for us because we're getting a lot of labeled data there. And we never have something like, there's a power horse of attention actually in esports, because people are having a high level of attention all the time. And they are reacting 100 times a minute with different signals. And what we do is we make our machine learning model out of this and put those models into the different verticals where you have different problems actually. In the automotive world, you have the problem of not being able to see the signal because there's so much noise, that means light there. Here you have the problem that people don't spend so much time before diagnostic devices that would help them. But this is where we're aiming at actually, to be fast in our prediction. With a camera like this here, with a feedback like this here, given on the application that we're having.
Christian, 1 minute.
Okay, we are in here. What are we doing? Medical training is one part. So what we're doing currently is we are in the act of submitting 2 research proposals to the European Union, where we're doing surveillance of medical training, and we have a look at surgical precision, because the point is attention is not the problem. Reaction time is the problem, signal detection is the problem, and decision making is the problem. So when attention fades, those 3 go away. And this is neither good for actually a surgical action, nor is it good for the medical training per se. We also know that on the mental health side, or either the neurological disorder side, we can see, yes, as I said, those precursors. And we also have something in the pipeline, a trauma detection, where we can use this for patients with cranial trauma. Yes, we are working in the esports sector primarily. That means we have interaction there. And I just want to show you here, that's the team. Finally, so we have a team with a specialist in medical artificial intelligence, with a specialist in machine vision, with an AI specialist, yes, and with me as a humble specialist on neuroscience and much more consulting, I must say, the last couple of years. So thanks for your attention. Sorry for stretching the time a little bit, but I think it wasn't too long.
So I have a question. Can you, maybe I missed it in your explanation, we see a lot of IP in this area from UCSD, as you mentioned, from Children's Hospital Boston, from Michigan, from various places in France. Where is your IP from, and how do you feel like you can protect it versus all the competition in this area?
Yes, number one, we have a patent that's applicable for Europe. So for vigilance, for the medical application, we have a patent that enables us to measure and predict vigilance by lid movements. That's the one thing. The other thing is all the IP that's in this area, first of all, we would not share it. So we have a strategy of not sharing our IP when it comes to our algorithms. Because one thing is for sure, there are not so many competitors in the area of esports. And what we're having now is currently we're having a POC in Korea where we have access to 50,000 esports players, providing us with the best data you can imagine when it comes to attention. And you might say, yes, they are not old people. True, they're not old people, but the model is the thing that will be the outcome. And we will not share this model, definitely. So it will be in our domain. It will be kept a corporate secret. The camera, on the other hand, is composed of standard components. It will have an AI chip in it. So it will be absolutely a standalone solution for everything you can do. You can put it on the rim of your monitor and have it for, I don't know, your father, if you think he might develop a condition, a neurological condition, you can put it on the monitor and watch how his eyes are moving and have a prediction based on these AI models. That is the idea. But we are aware that there.
Christian, you didn't tell us what the ask was. How much money were you raising for what percentage of the company?
We are raising 1.5 million. We already have a conditioned, and now we're talking about the whole part actually. Because for the camera, we need 750K to put this camera into action, which will take us approximately 14 months to put it all together. It's machine vision is really a tricky topic here. We're already having a conditional funding of 1 million from a Korean investor who invests more in the esports training and then the detection of attention with esports. But nevertheless, our idea is to make the platform. So what we have in the end is the platform. What we have in the end is a piece of hardware. And this piece of hardware can be applied to e-learning, can be applied to, well, medical diagnostics, and of course, to esports, where it comes from.
Okay, thank you very much. And we have our last question, project, Biospectral.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Fantastic. Finally, we made it to the last one, right?
Yes.
Thank you for holding on. I'm Patrick. I'm calling from Switzerland. I'm a professor of anesthesia and the co-founder of Biospectral, where we manage the silent killing disease, which is called hypertension. And our goal is to democratize the hypertension management at the global scale. For that, we just use a device that we all have in our pockets, which is called a smartphone. We democratize the smartphones, the data they generate into connected and clinical grade blood pressure monitoring. And as you know, hypertension is a silent killing disease. It's quite a big market of 1.4 billion people who are affected by this disease. And the COVID—
Patrick, would you like to share the presentation?
Oh, you don't see it?
No.
Oh, sorry for that. Let me see if I share the presentation now. Sorry for that. You see it now?
No, it's on, yes.
Sorry for that. Now you see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. So as I said, you see that hypertension is not the best disease to have. And I think, unfortunately, the COVID disease has demonstrated how bad it can be if you have this deadly disease. Interestingly, as a doctor, I'm fascinated how we address the situation. In the year 2020, we still use exactly the same device to measure the vital signs, which was invented more than 100 years ago. And besides being an old device using old technology, there is no way to manage the data they generate. So what we have designed is just transforming your own smartphone using only software that is embedded in the smartphone, using exactly every device which is in the smartphone, that is a camera, CPU, and the processing value, to generate, just by putting your finger on the camera, accessible and actionable data, which will allow a measurement of this vital signs anytime and anywhere without any additional hardware. There are many new solutions out there or are pretending to be able to measure vital signs such as blood pressure, unfortunately, they all need a specific device. We are the only ones without any devices. The other thing we've made a bit differently is that we have been training an algorithm. We have been submitting data to the software that I have been measuring and recording in my operating room through blood pressure measurement that we have been inquiring invasively through the arterial lines. So we're not relating on the cuff, which carries some diseases, but actually on their invasive blood pressure measurement. And as of today, we have more than 100,000 arterial line data samples that allow us to improve the algorithm. So who do we target? Well, of course, the 1.4 billion hypertensive patients, on-the-go hypertensive, who all carry a smartphone in their pocket, who are diagnosed or actually undiagnosed, but could be health focused. And of course, all the other ones besides the 1.4 billion people. Our business roadmap, so we're targeting the first app by the end of this year on the Android, because it's one of the most available devices around the world, because we think worldwide. And of course, you see here the current roadmap that expands to all the existing devices and the different partners. And of course, we are a data company. So we also have built in our roadmap data services. So how do we acquire, or how do we go through monetization? We are a data company, and OptiBP, the name of our app, is just an excuse to get to this data, to analyze it, and to transform this into actionable data that will actually increase or improve the management of this silent killing disease. Throughout the 3 years that we exist, we are very fortunate to have some very interesting and good relationship with big institutions, being it the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Mass Challenge, the World Health Organization, and many others, especially quite a few university hospitals around the world, that allows us to collect specific data related to subtypes of population, races, etc., etc. So we are targeting right now a 5 million seed funding that will allow us throughout the next 2 years to improve our performance with regards to all the existing smartphones and devices around the world, always integrating the progress that these devices every 6 months are reinvented. Interestingly, the cameras are very often similar, and CPUs just improve every hour now. So we're very happy about this. The team, I'm based in Switzerland as a chief medical officer. My CEO is based in Silicon Valley, and we're very fortunate to have been able to collaborate with a big expanded team coming from the world of engineering and the Biospectel team by itself. And Reinhard Starry is on the call with me if you have any questions about finance and investor relations. So thank you very much for your listening, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Perfect, Patrick. The only one on time, made in Switzerland.
I'm Swiss.
Yes, I know. I lived there for 3 years. Perfect.
Patrick, can you expand on the technology? What have you built so far?
Sorry, you got broken up, sorry.
What have you built so far, and what it took you to build that?
So we have a running app that works on specific models of Androids that allows us to demonstrate with accuracy the blood pressure value if we compare it to the existing cuffs. And I hope in the next 2 weeks to be able to send you the published scientific paper where we assess the performance of the app and being it compliant to the ISO norm that we would need to respect if we would be inventing a new cuff.
Patrick, maybe we should add that together with the CSEM, which is a larger organization here in Switzerland, this technology has been developed during the last 7 years, basically. So it's patented.
Yeah, so I've been collaborating with them, and I've been collecting optical data the last 7 years in my operating room, always feeding the data by invasively acquired blood pressure values. So the true value, the gold standard of blood pressure.
And I mean, how close are you to the gold standard? How could we measure that?
So we are as close and as good as the cuff, and depending on the times, even a little bit better than the cuff. You know, if you would be expanding or inventing a new cuff, you need to respect the ISO guidelines. So we are full within the ISO guidelines. So we can actually claim to be able to measure blood pressure only with your own smartphone using a software only. And this is in a published paper.
Compared to other alternatives, you said they are not as precise. Why is that? What's the main reason?
So all the existing devices which are not cuff-based, you need to have a specific device, being it an add-on to another device, or et cetera, et cetera. And if you have a cuff, you might know that the cuff is not exactly perfect. So that is, you're allowed to have a ±5 millimeters of mercury accuracy for the cuff to be ISO compliant. So there is a range of errors which is related to this device, as for many other devices.
So you're the only one that doesn't have device. It's completely.
We are the only one which is purely software based that can be embedded in smartphones, correct? By using the camera, the CPU of the smartphone.
Okay.
Now, are you sure? So you haven't seen any other competition in this area?
There is, I mean, many apps measure heart rate, but there's no app that measures blood pressure accurately. There's a big buzz. Everybody wants to measure it. Everybody, some people claim to measure it, but I can tell you there is no certified company that measures blood pressure, not heart rate, blood pressure in an accurate way.
So here's my question for you, because what I was seeing with those software solutions is they may not be completely accurate, right? Not the way you might have your blood pressure taken in a doctor's office, but they're good enough. They're, you know, I mean, do you think that you need to be completely accurate, or just say, okay, you are, you know, a pregnant woman who has, you know, your blood pressure has just gone skyrocketing. It doesn't have to be, it just needs to be within the bounds of concern, not accurate. How would you respond to that?
I totally agree. I mean, the accurate, it's just a question of definition. The claim, I mean, the true value is to claim how accurate you are. We are targeting to be as accurate as minimum as the cuff. And so far we have been able to demonstrate accuracy. And even if you would say, let's say ±15 millimeters of mercury accurate, if you claim it this way, you could actually analyze and integrate this. But then it goes back to the question, how interesting is it to know that you're within 15 or 20 millimeters of mercury? Because there might be a big difference between 140 and 160 of millimeters. So this is all the question about how high you want to go and how close you are to the limits of hypertension or seriously hypertension.
Thank you.
And what is your IP?
So as you know, software is quite interesting or quite difficult to get IP for. So we do have running as IP about the optical signal analysis, the process of going from the finger to the value. So we have different specs that are actually protected by running IP already.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the pitching. Thank you very much for the discussions. I hope you all guys had fun tonight with the panel and with the pitching. I was very happy to have you all, and I hope to talk to you soon again. And let's continue to be in touch, and everyone have a great evening or a great day, depending on which part of the ocean you are. And hugs. See you soon. Bye.
Thanks. Bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
See you around.
Thank you so much.